Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Blindspot as well as the latest episode of the Blacklist. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Blindspot, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of the Blacklist. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Blindspot. A lot of interesting things, obviously picking up where last week's episode not last week's episode, the previous episode left us with Jane getting kidnapped by Dominic. And obviously they're trying to question and push Madeline, but Madeline, being who she is, calm, cool, and collected, still trying to pretend like, I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, oh, this picture you show me, I don't know if that's Jane that's under there. We don't see the person, no characteristics to show that it is her, and that face is blurry. We don't know that that's Dominic. And then like her lawyer, Richard Shirley, that dude gets involved, and he just seems like he's kind of a weirdo oddball, the way he talks a lot and stuff like that. But even though he does what he's acting weird like that, he doesn't seem like he is a lawyer. He's very good at covering his ass. He's very good at covering Madeline's ass in this regard. It turns into a whole situation because obviously Dominic wants her released. And, you know, if they don't release her, they won't ever find out where Jane is, because it turns out Jane is in a coffin, buried underground, which sucks, you know, because to me that's one of the worst things, kind of like being stuck in that, like being buried alive like that. That's just like one of the most terrible things. And obviously, like, this is causing, you know, problems. You know, the team is obviously, like, everyone's worried and scared. There's even a moment where, like, Patterson and Rich are yelling at each other. And Rich is like, I'm not yelling at you because I'm angry. I'm scared. And she's like, I'm scared, too. It's like, well, let's get into doing this. And it just, you know, but it's like a wide radius they have to search. Jane has a phone, but that phone has very little battery to it. Even at one point in time, it dies. And Jane charges it with her, you know, the wire to her bra. And I love Rich being like, oh, see? Yeah, and Patterson has some stupid idea of using dirt or something like that. And Patterson just looks at him. And Rich is almost kind of, I'm sorry, you know, I love that. He even got Jane to eat the dirt. And I love Jane being like, are you just really just trying to get me to eat dirt? And he's like, no, it's to help us find you. And it's like, oh yeah, you know, it tastes like dirt, but it also tastes a little bit like sulfur. It's like, does it taste like it smells? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, ew. I just love that. Obviously, like I said, you know, Madeline's playing her little games. Her lawyer's being really smart, because it's like, oh, just in case you might be trying to record this conversation that we said we don't want anything recorded, I'm brought in this, you know, this frequency blocker. And it's like, oh, I thought you just came from the airport. He's like, oh, this I just carry around all the time. It's like, they know what to expect. I guess like that's why Madeline pays him the big bucks and all that. But obviously it's like, though it was kind of interesting, though. It did seem like that even though Madeline is kind of the way she is, she does have buttons that need to be pushed. Because obviously she's not trying to give way to anything that like Reed or Kurt is doing. But interesting enough, when Tasha kind of started pushing buttons about her son, now that was really interesting. Because at first it's like, oh yeah, what about your husband? Yeah, you murdered him and everything. Because to be fair, like, Tasha did get fairly close, so she knows where a lot of the skeletons are buried. She did bring up a good point of like, yeah, what about all the people from ACI Global that you poisoned? Like, oh, they all died in a plane crash. And she's like, yeah, but so did I, didn't I? So I think that's an argument that could come up later on of like, oh yeah, like obviously a lot of that was faked, but at the same time you can make the argument, I'm sure the argument could be made of like, well, Tasha, you know, faked her own death for her own reason, that she, the fact is that she's still alive probably is her way of being, the justification could be like, she's the one that set it all in motion, since she is the one that's alive. She faked her death and everything. So there's that. But she ends up pushing the button of like, oh yeah, like your sons, they love their dad. You know, it's like, oh, what if they find out about you being the one that murdered him? Like, we'll keep that hush hush if you help us find Jane. And what was interesting though is it didn't necessarily seem that was 100% what pushed her buttons. What ended up pushing her button is like this whole DUI situation that her son kind of like, you know, Madeline had to cover up, and it's like it was related to drugs. So, you know, a whole bunch of drugs that he was carrying, and it's like, but because of that possession, and then like he would have gone to jail for a very long time, and that's what they kind of threatened Madeline with, and that in particular. And which is kind of crazy considering the fact that it almost seemed like she has no regards for life in general. She cares a lot about her sons. It's interesting because I don't think she's ever really brought them up in conversation a lot. I'd actually forgotten entirely that she had kids if it wasn't for those flashbacks. I'm like, oh, she's actually brought them up before. Interesting. Which it makes you wonder, do her sons have no idea what she's up to? I mean, to be fair, like, look at Hank Crawford and Blake. Blake had no idea what her dad was up to. But what about, there's always a chance that they do know and that they're kind of part of the plan. I highly doubt it. I mean, to be fair, well, yeah, because our kids are old enough. I'm about to say, what if they're young? But it's like, no, one of them's young enough to get like a DUI in that situation, so I'm sure he's old enough. He's probably like a late teen or early young adult, either way. So, like I said, it seems like she did bring them up before. Like I said, I just completely forgotten. So there was also the interesting element of obviously like Kurt is like, okay, we got to make this deal, but Reed is kind of like, we can't. Like the fact of the matter is, it's not on him. Like obviously he kind of feels a certain way, but at the same time, it's also because like they need to get permission from higher ups to make deals like this, but no one's really kind of talking to him. He's trying to get in contact with Whites, can't do it the entire episode. But, Kurt's obviously, like, Jane's life is in danger and he's desperate to save her. And he brought up an interesting conversation of, like, basically it comes up later on of, like, we have to make this deal because eventually, like, it comes out. Because I figured as much when Jane was like, okay, I want to talk to Reed by myself. I was like, yeah, it's that self-sacrifice type of situation. And Reed eventually tells Kurt that, and he's like, of course Jane would do that, because if she died, at the very least she wants her death to mean something, that we ended up taking down Madeline. But for him it's like, if any of us die trying to take down Madeline, then she wins in the end. We have to come through this all together. Even if things don't work out now, we could always get her later on. Everyone kind of like had that same feeling about it. Tasha being the one who aimed to take her down, if it meant saving Jane, I think in the long run that's all that matters, And Reed was kind of stuck in a tough position because obviously there's a side of him that's like, he cares about Jane too. They're all part of a family and he wants to do this, but he can't let Madeline go, because it also brings up a conversation he had with Kurt too, of being like the whole thing of like, just because we help Madeline doesn't mean she's not going to keep stringing us along until it's too late. And even if we do what Dominic wants, there's no guarantee he'll tell us actually where Jane is. He might just kind of, let her die just to be like one last middle finger to all of this. So it is interesting in the long run when we end up finding out by the end of the episode, like this whole situation, this wasn't Madeline's plan. This wasn't some plan B that she had in store. This is just something Dominic came up with on the fly. But that kind of shows you how Madeline plays too, because the fact of the matter is Dominic, she quickly adjusted to what Dominic had set in motion. Like I said, she probably was going to deal with him herself when it was all said and done, but still it's just kind of a thing of like, she quickly adapted to be like, okay, I need to do this, I need to say this, blah, 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 Like I said, it's a suckiest situation to have Jane kind of put in that situation of like, being buried alive like that. Like I said, the phone dying, because it's almost like that phone is your only tie to hope, and having it die just kind of makes her, probably a little more reluctant to believe like, oh, everything's going to work out. She's hopeful because she knows that her friends, her family is out there looking for her. So it's like, oh, the team's going to come through. She at least, hope. So it was pretty, like I said, pretty ingenious. I didn't say, but I should have said, obviously earlier, like the whole like charging the battery like that, pretty ingenious and stuff like that. So I also can't forget, like, Rich, they were, like, basically, I forgot what it was. Basically, they were going to pay off the whole situation of kind of getting things back in motion so that, like, because all the planes got shut down and stuff like that. It was like, well, we'll pay the debt. That way, it's like, because Rich is like, I got some money stashed away, and, like, Patterson doesn't want to flaunt it, but she's super rich and stuff like that from her tech days, working on that app, that game app, and everything, which is kind of interesting to know that Patterson's got, like, that much cash like stashed away in a bank account and stuff like that. I mean, that just obviously just shows you because she just really likes her job, because she is able to do good, and obviously there's the whole mystery element, but obviously it's more so the whole aspect of, oh, we get to do good and save the world and do that, save the day type of situations. But it's just kind of interesting to know that she's got that big Easter egg to kind of like, fall back on when everything's said and done. But I love Rich being like, because I love Patterson being like, he said billions. And then Rich being like, wait, you said billions? I thought you said millions. My fault. He's like, why didn't you say anything? And she's like, I did. I love their back and forth. It's so good. But luckily, when it was all said and done, the team working together, getting the information they were able to get, they were able to get to Jane in time to kind of bust her out. I did like that little moment, just basically every cop being there, like basically they were trying to bounce a signal from her phone to everyone else's phone within the vicinity to make it so you can pinpoint where she was. I thought that was pretty ingenious, and I liked it. It worked in the end. I was kind of hoping the way when Tasha walked in there later on that it's like, oh, that they were going to walk Jane by, and she's like, yeah, I'm still alive. I thought that was going to be the middle finger, but it's like, nah, reading them just arresting her straight up, and she's like, what's going on? It's like, we had a deal. It's like, oh, we had a deal? Oh, yeah, too bad there's no recordings of us making that deal, so it never officially happened. I love that, using their whole situation against them. Like, they wanted the no recordings thing, and it kind of backfired in this regard. But there was a really interesting conversation between Tasha and Madeline, and being like, why did you leave me alive? And that was a big thing too, because I kept thinking like, oh, she was doing it because she wanted her personal revenge against Tasha. It's like, no, because for her it's like, oh, the fact of the matter is, because I had a feeling I could turn you. There was a part of her apparently that kind of knew that Tasha was working with the government, but she felt like, Tasha's loyalties weren't set in stone. Even right now, she's like, back then I felt like, yeah, you could have been swayed. I still kind of feel like you don't 100% feel like where you belong, because she's kind of up in the air right now. Which I don't think so, but Madeline's kind of trying to push that button. And so, to me, I thought that was just such an interesting thing for Madeline to say, because it's like, she knew there was a chance she were working with the government, but it's like, because Madeline thinks she's very good at what she does, and I guess because of where Tasha was, I guess just because it's like her relationship with the FBI, in particular her team and everything, was kind of, she had to sacrifice that work with the CIA. You go, undercover for that long, eventually kind of takes its toll on you, which it did. I think all that made Madeline go like, oh, there's a good chance I could turn you. Didn't work out in her favor. But Madeline also said an interesting thing when she was being taken away of like, the fact is the FBI will always look at you as there might be a part of you that, hey, you might be working for me. I don't think the main squad's going to think that. FBI, some higher ups in the, food chain might, especially with Whites, because obviously we didn't get in contact with him the entire episode. I'm going to be curious to see what his explanation is for that. But let's not forget Dominic's kind of got him. Like, he might have called something in this episode we just didn't get to see, but that's still a card that has to be played, and I'm sure they're going to use that to their advantage to take down Tasha, especially because Madeline's like, oh, I'm going to, make sure I take you down. But you see that part of Tasha, I think, that is kind of like, maybe she was afraid that maybe there's some truth to what Madeline was saying, because of the look on her face being like, I don't know, I mean, ultimately, when it's all said and done, everything seems like it's cleared up, at least in Keaton's department. So for Tasha, it's like, where do you want to go from here? And for her, is to be back with the team. I love Reed kind of cracking the joke and being like, oh, you can submit your, resume to HR or whatever, and we'll see what ends up happening there. I love that whole thing. But I think, bringing up what Kurt had said before about, if one of them died, the entire team, then Madeline would win. I think that kind of put things in perspective for Reed, too, of him kind of putting a lot of stuff behind. Because I think at that moment he wanted Tasha to be back on the team and everything, for them to be kind of a fully unified front, fully unified family and team again. So I'm curious to see what ends up happening with that, just because of the whole Whites angle and what that's going to turn into. Because Dominic's part to play in all this isn't over. I was actually halfway expecting the lawyer to pull out a gun, but he was like, no, I'm a lawyer. That's not my business. The fact of the matter is this Helios thing. It's like, you're going to be operating while Madeline's in jail, but I'm sure there's still going to be the angle of her potentially. I mean, obviously we got her this season again, but Hurst, I'm so... Well, not again, because I think that was her. Yeah, that was the only time she had popped up this season. But I'm curious, like, will we get any more with that? What about any more with Borden? Those seem like those might be like heavy one-off things. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm curious, is there going to be any crossover between Madeline, Hurst, and Borden in some shape or form? Is that going to be some like... I mean, it seems like Borden's kind of turned things around. Obviously, Hurst seemed like she's got her own thing going on, but obviously Madeline does too. It seems like this whole Helios thing seems like it is like an attack. Why specifically? Maybe it's because she's trying to profit from it. I don't know. Like, isn't because the whole what Crawford wanted to make, that whole like unified country that's like an army to basically police the world, that kind of keep the powers to be in check essentially. That whole thing, it's like that was his plan. It was never Madeline's. It seems like hers is about power and position, and I guess whatever this Helios attack ends up being, which apparently it's going to be like an eastern seaboard situation, what it exactly entails, you can only surmise. But like, I don't get why an attack would benefit her. How would she benefit from it? I don't know. Maybe there are other partners she hasn't played. It seems like she's the only one involved in all this, but who's to say there's not more people connected? Like I said, we'll have to wait and see. I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. And now moving on to this week's episode of The Blacklist. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. So first and foremost, we have Reddington literally telling Liz, like, oh yeah, I want to go after this competition. Basically, Olivia Olson, she kind of manipulates situations because it's like, okay, she's working for someone. She basically helps expand businesses. Like, the fact of the matter is, someone wants to take over this trade. She kind of finds a way, kind of find weak points to kind of strike to lead someone to completely take over something. Like something that was run by someone else, she takes them out of the picture so that she can give it to her new employee, essentially. And Reddington wants to take her down because she's connected to Anna. And so that ends up being a very interesting situation because even Liz is like, wait, you're literally telling me what you're doing? Like, usually you're super vague about what you really have in mind. It's like, this is what you have. It's like, yeah, the fact of the matter is he's just kind of like, yeah, that's what it is. Obviously. And I love Wrestler doing his thing of like, well, maybe it's this. Maybe he wants us to think we know what he's doing when in actuality he has something else. Like even Wrestler's trying to say like, okay, so where's the twist coming in this? Like, there's no way it's going to be this straightforward with Reddington. So, and obviously everything with Haram immediately being like, oh, so she hurts people like Mr. Reddington does. Well, it's true. And I love that before he even said that, like after he said, well, it's true, there was that super like 5-second long awkward silence because the fact of the matter is Haram never talks about Reddington like that, but obviously he's still pissed about the whole Samara situation, which that whole side of the episode we'll talk about soon enough. But what I really love too is the fact is that Reddington literally shows up and is like, Olivia, I know that you're working with a woman named Anna, stop working for her and work for me. It's like, dude, we literally are doing this whole thing trying to make sure she doesn't know. And then Reddington comes back and Cooper's pissed off. It's like, why would you do that? You're hiding the fact is that we're not the client. Well, the fact is I didn't tell you just proves that I didn't care whether you knew or not. So that's why I didn't say anything. It didn't really matter. And he's telling Cooper, it's like, hey, just calm down, smoke a cigar, read some Calvin and Hobbes, do whatever it takes before you have an aneurysm. Because he knew exactly how Anna would react, and lo and behold, she ends up showing up there. Because I love what Reddington's done, because he's shown that, yes, he knows about Anna being a part of this whole thing. Like, he knows that there's more up with her. But the way everything's kind of constructed, it's like the FBI sent the FBI after Olivia, but maybe Reddington's keeping it to himself. That even comes up in conversation later on because it's like, did Reddington ever tell you why he wanted Olivia? It's like, no, I couldn't even guess why. And so for her, it's like, okay, I'm safe. Reddington's playing this whole thing close to the vest, so the FBI doesn't know why they were after Olivia, so I'm good. Which I love that because obviously it's so good. Like, once again, I love cat and mouse situations like this, and especially because Cooper has to smile and like, oh, because she's like, yeah, this relationship is actually going to work good because obviously you're following the rules that I've set up about the paperwork and everything like that. He's like, yeah, and she's like, yeah, and he has to smile and pretend like everything's okay when in actuality working with the lady who could catch them, and it like obviously it adds this level of nervousness to it, the whole thing of being like, oh, we need to take down this lady, but this lady is our new boss, so she oversees everything we do, so we have to be careful. But Reddington doing things, this episode kind of put a wrench in that, except it seems like, no, that was all part of his well orchestrated plan. It's like, man, Reddington really thinks things through. You should never underestimate if Reddington's like, oh, things are going to go down this way for a reason, you kind of leave it up to that and be like, oh, Reddington has a reason for doing all that he does. So it was kind of interesting. It kind of also shows you the lengths that Olivia would be willing to go. Because even one of the people that at her business, like Rain Cloud, was like, aren't we forgetting about like the casualties? And she's like, she's like, I hope that's like a rhetorical question. And the guy kind of shut up because it's like they're willing to sacrifice people's lives if it means kind of profiting from it, essentially. Which, it's kind of interesting because Olivia doesn't actually get caught this episode, but she kind of served her purpose of getting him closer to Anna, so it's like she can go off and do whatever she wants to. But I think she might be a future ally for Reddington because like Anna almost got her caught and everything, and for her it's like, oh, like she even said it, like, you might think of it as a badge of honor having Reddington as an enemy, but not me. So I think Reddington might be able to call on her as an ally in the future. She might actually go for him. Or maybe she'll kind of start up her business somewhere else. I'd assume she'd kind of stay low-key. I mean, to be fair, like, she's not the main person they're after. To be fair, there's always a possibility that Anna might send someone after her. That's also, because she's a loose end, so that might be something to kind of consider as well. there's also the whole element of like wrestler still not letting it go. We need to figure out this whole fake Reddington thing, and Liz is like, let it go. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter who he is anymore, which once again is so interesting considering the whole Jennifer angle. Even though, like, how does she, because that's what I'm curious, like, what is she telling Jennifer? I guess Jennifer has just kind of moved on. She moved past all of this, and I guess for her, maybe hearing the fact is maybe what went down in court of like, oh, like the fact of the matter is Reddington, everything they ever said about Reddington was a lie. That was like this lie that the Cabal as well as Katarina came up with to, you know, smear his name. So the situation, you know, might be a thing of like Jennifer knows the truth about her dad now. I'm curious to see if she'll pop back up later on in the story and be like, so did you find out anything? And then Liz might be like, I'm not looking into it anymore. And she's like, you're what? No, you made a promise. We got to see this through. Like, you know, she might come back more invigorated and wanting the truth now after some time. But it seemed like she just wanted to get away. And I think Liz is using that to her, you know, in this regard to just kind of let that whole situation go as well. We'll have to see. But Wrestler isn't, because he's looking into it. Because for him, it's like, yeah, I figured it's fine and dandy. Like, obviously, I eventually grew to the fact is, okay, we're helping out an evil guy, but he's helping us take down other evil people. So it kind of worked. But for him, it's like that all changed because now he knows that Reddington isn't the real Reddington. And for him, it's like, now I don't know what his real motives are. Before, it's like, oh, he's Reddington, his big crime boss. But it's like, now you're not even that. So it's like, what is it that you really have up your sleeve? Even going as far as looking up stuff about Katarina, trying to fight, like talk to someone that was on a task force or team that was looking into Katarina way back in the day. And even, you know, Liz didn't want to look into her mom's situation because it's like, even if her mom somehow managed to still be alive, it's not like her mom would tell her the truth. She'd probably lie just like Reddington. Or the fact of the matter is she might not even know all the details herself. I mean, there's probably a situation. I would assume she knows everything. I would assume she wouldn't be alive just because Mr. Kaplan, like, I feel just because of Kate, like, there'd be no way she wouldn't. I mean, not unless she knew that she was alive this entire time and just didn't say anything, kept it a close to the vest secret. You know, it's hard to say with all these secrets floating around and stuff like that, but Wrestler hasn't given up, so I'm interested to see what route that ends up taking him down. This might be something where we end up finding Katarina before anything else. It's also interesting, too, that Wrestler's taking this whole task on. And like I said, I get the feeling like this whole situation is going to bring him and Liz closer. Like, they've always been pretty close, and I feel like they've gotten closer and closer over the course of the series. Once again, still to me hinting being like... Because like I've brought this up time and time again, I've always felt like they were going to be a thing at the beginning of the series. Maybe, but to be fair, she was still with Tom at the time. You know, and obviously that was a continuous situation, which I'm not saying I had a problem with that. I always loved her and Tom being a thing, but I always kind of felt like maybe there was going to ever... maybe be something between her and Wrestler. Maybe that's a route we'll go down. Who knows? But this whole situation, like I was saying, they are a step closer with the whole Anna thing because they know that there's a group like the Three Estate. Basically, it's a a French Revolution thing of like basically it's basically the other 99% against, you know. So it's like what that means for Anna. Like basically, it's about people tied to funding whatever it is that she's doing, like group she's working with to kind of get this attack that's coming, you know, so we'll ultimately have to wait and see where that all takes us. But the other side of the episode is the whole situation with Ram. When he started liquidating that money, I was like, 60 million. It's like, did you really have that stashed away? Is that everything being liquidated? It's like, how do you do that? And it's not till later on, because I'm an idiot. It didn't click in my head until later on where he, like, you know, Haram was walking right by Reddington, and Reddington's like, it'll get better. And Haram's like, you know, he's like, yeah, I know it will because you'll make it right. The moment he said that, I was like, it clicked in my head. I was like, he took your 60 million. And the moment Dembe got the call, I was like, that call is about the 60 million that he just took from Reddington. Because it's interesting, because even Cooper's like, the fact of the matter is you don't like this whole situation, but you got to keep your stuff in line, kind of put your feelings aside a little bit just so we can get the job done, which even Haram replied being like, the fact of the matter is I am angry, but I'm focused like I never thought possible. And so it's like, hey, I'm going to hold your 60 million until you take me to see some more. And obviously, like, Haram went through the trouble of writing on these letters for Cooper, Wrestler, as well as Liz. And they get on a plane and everything. And I love it. Like, Haram still wants to help out the team and everything like that. But it's interesting to hear the conversations that, you know, he tries to have with Haram, basically telling him, like, things aren't going to work out the way you think they are. You think there's going to be kind of a happy ending to this. He's like, the fact of the matter is, you didn't say anything to the team. You didn't say, like, a direct goodbye, because you, on some level, feel like, oh, when it's all said and done, you'll bring Samar back and you'll go back to your life. It's like, no, you make this choice, you go see Samar, there's no turning back. You can't contact anyone, because the fact of the matter is, most likely they're watching you, hoping that you'll lead them to Samar, because they probably tapped your phone, your house. It's like, how would you know that? It's like, that's what I would do. Plus, Dembe, reason why we took a longer time to get to the airport, because he was making sure to shake any tails that we might have had. The fact of the matter is, kind of going into this whole thing, I thought was kind of pretty neat, because obviously, like I said, he ends up helping the team out and everything, because for him, it's like, I'm in purgatory. I'm in a place where it's like, I'm not directly with Samar, so they can't start tracking her then. So I'm still in that sweet spot where I can still help out the team without, giving up on my whole thing of wanting to be with Samar. But for Reddington, he brings up this whole interesting thing of, like, he's made a lot of mistakes, in the sense that he's done a lot of stuff that's end up hurting a lot of people that he cares about, and that, guilt has always kind of weighed on him, and it's a heavy burden. And the fact of the matter is, it's like, if you go to Samar, you're just going to put that burden, obviously that burden she already has on her, leaving you behind. If you go to her, she's just going to have to leave you again. And for him, it's like, the fact is, Samar is the strongest person I know. It's like, she's so strong, you say that, but she couldn't say goodbye to you directly to your face. So, like he said, like, you have a lot of power, Haram. That in itself is a lot of power. Don't underestimate the kind of power that you have, and don't kind of use it willy-nilly. Kind of like use it sparingly and wisely. Because how I chalk that up is basically, if Samar had to see him face to face to try and say goodbye, it's because she knows that seeing him would have made her go, I have to bring him along. But the fact is, Samar doesn't want that for him, because, Haram kind of she treats it as a situation of like, oh, she left me behind because she knows that she's afraid that, when it's all said and done, that I'll come to resent her, like, the moment her condition gets worse. But it's like, no, because at the end of the day, like, she knows what it means. You'd have to abandon everything in your life, and the fact of the matter is, she doesn't want that for you. It's like, you sacrifice and you're hurt a little now, rather than, hurting someone a lot. Because if, Haram, came along, like, obviously, she'd be putting his life in danger, and she doesn't want that. The sacrifices you have to make for the people, and like he was saying, Red was like, it's a heavy burden. At the very least, let her carry on that burden, being like, I might have hurt Aram, but eventually, at least he's safe and he's okay, that he's not a target, I was kind of thinking the entire time that they were up in the air on a plane, I was thinking like, oh, like, Reddington's got the plane circling Aram, thinks like they're going to where Samar is, but they weren't. Maybe they were the entire time. They never really answered that. I chalked it up to that, but, but I guess they were literally on their way there, but then they had to turn back around. Maybe, I don't know. Not unless Reddington was kind of circling in the air. But I did like that Haram ended up coming back just in time, because Liz had just read the letter and everything. And I also love the fact is that Reddington made it so it's like, yeah, you owe me interest on it. He was like, also, I'm going to give you the discount, for family and friends and stuff like that. And I love when it's all said and done, Haram's like, yeah, I owe Mr. Reddington like $56,000. And Liz is like, wait, what? He's like, I'll explain later on, but I thought that was kind of pretty neat. But it does kind of end on a somber note of the, fact is that, Haram has to be there, and he sees, he's talking to like the bugs and cameras that's in his place and being like, you're not going to find her. She's gone. I will never lead you to her. And it kind of sinks in. He has to say it again. She's gone. She's really gone. Like, the fact of the matter is, there's no coming back for Samar. Because I don't know, like, I was thinking, like, maybe there was a repairable way to fix this. I don't know. Literally, her government wants to kill her. I don't know if there's any easy way to come back or fix that. Maybe Reddington can, but for now, it seems like it's just kind of a gone forever situation. Like, he loves her, and she obviously loves him, but it's like, they just can't be together in that regard, So, it just kind of breaks your heart all over again. It is going to be interesting to see. I think with everything kind of set up the way it is now, maybe Reddington and Haram are in a better place, or at least where they were at before, because obviously Haram was pissed at him last episode, literally punching him in the face like that. But it's going to be, I think Haram is going to be a lot calmer. We probably won't see things go back 100% the way they were, but at the very least, he even admitted, it's like, I understand why Samar did what she did. I even understand why you helped her out in the long run. So it's like, for him, it wasn't even like a whole, I'm 100% angry at you. He's annoyed, obviously a little pissed, but I don't think, like I say, because taking time, like even he realizes, like, you know, Reddington was just doing, you know, what Samara asked him to do, because it was her whole plan and her whole decision, you know, so it just makes it even more real now that you're kind of sitting on it even longer, and even hearing him say at the end, she's really gone, you know, so. Another element we also should talk about too is obviously the thing before Liz got into Reddington's place, like obviously him taking the injection, obviously the pills, like he's still hiding the fact is that he's sick. And I think maybe on some level Reddington kind of felt the same way about how like Samar didn't tell anyone at first about her condition. Like obviously Reddington's not telling anyone. The only person that knows is Denbei as well as his doctors. But eventually it's going to come out that Liz will find out the truth. I mean, that whole thing might lend itself to like finding out Reddington's true identity, whatever his condition is that he's suffering from, that he's trying to get cured. There was a part of me that was thinking like that business that Olivia ends up attacking, that charity event, like that, the whole thing about Parkinson's, part of me wondered if that had some kind of connection to what's going on with Reddington. Probably not. It just seemed interesting that like the business she ended up tackling ends up being a business that's, you know, try to gather up money and, you know, charity for like, you know, helping fight a disease. And it's just interesting that Reddington seems like he's sick too. Like that might just be like just coincidental. Maybe it's kind of a little hint to potentially what he has. I don't know. It's definitely going to be very interesting to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.